welcome to the Common Creative Podcast, episode number 4, with your host Tim Gardner, and we're here with Iffy, Ollie and Bernard from Filmonik Melbourne. Filmonik is part of the Kino Cabaret worldwide filmmaking movement, and it's also something that I've participated in myself over the past 3 years. Iffy and Ollie manage the monthly Filmonik meetup and the cabaret with the help of Bernard and the rest of the Filmonik Melbourne team. Guys, thanks for coming in. To kick things off, could you extrapolate a little bit about what Filmonik is all about for those listening that don't know very much about Filmonik?
First, hi. I think we're all happy to be here.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
I think Bernard is the best at describing Filmonik.
Well, I'm the latest person on the committee, but I'll give it a go. I think one of the things we need to point out really clearly is that there's two parts of Filmonik. One is the Filmonik monthly open mic screenings and the cabaret, which is once a year. So, and Filmonik basically, I think, is best described like an open mic for short films, where we make available a screening venue for people to bring their 5-minute films, 4 5-minute films, and we'll screen them and provide an audience of maybe 30, 40 people. And it's designed to encourage new filmmakers who would not otherwise get a venue to screen their films, and give them a venue where they feel really secure and inclusive and basically fearless, so that they can put their film up there and know they're not going to have a whole lot of people jeering at them. And I think it's a really good venue to just allow people to put their toe in the water with films and get pretty early feedback and get a really good feeling for the crowd.
It's a good place to test your films before submitting to festivals or to know the reaction of people. And it's a good place also because you'll be within, in confidence. It's good to have the critics also and to improve. And so I find it's over the time, that's what I like the most, is the exchange that we have. And we also get to know each other a bit more. We might get great teammates that we want to work with in the future. There's always great people to meet, and great ideas, always. So I really enjoy it for that. And it's linked to the worldwide network, so it's good for that too, where you feel you can travel with it. Yeah.
I think the cabaret is the extension of all of that, because during the cabaret you just try stuff also, and in principle it's the same. Yeah, it's the same guiding principle. You can, depending of if you're starting, obviously it's your first film, and then people are like, oh yeah, that's cool, you're making your first film and you're trying stuff, and when you're professional, it's another level, because you're still always trying stuff, you're always learning. So it's like someone will try for the first time to have a really dialogue heavy short film improvised, and then I think people know that they can fail, they can make it. Most films are amazing, but when you push it, when you risk it, it's all where you are as an artist. You're
it's a great place to test what you
all levels.
Yeah.
There's always stuff to try, equipment to test run.
Ollie, he does usually comedy and absurd films, and he just did a drama. So that was a good test run. And I would say nobody laughed, so he did a good drama.
Yeah. It's a very odd thing when nobody laughs at Ollie's film.
I've always really enjoyed them, I have to say. It's an absurd style of humour that, look, maybe it doesn't resonate with everybody, but I love it. I always get it. Yeah.
But this one will be dark. The next one, that one day we'll see. But,
so what's it like going from comedy to in the opposite direction? And what motivated you to do that?
I think it's really about what I have to say. For the longest time, the stuff I had to say, like, it's just some other people will have subjects they can exploit or explore more than me. And I don't feel inclined to just be active in those fields where it's not necessarily my voice. Then, yeah, because I do like to write my own stuff, but it's better if I talk about me. And when it comes to me, there's a set of values and there's a set of travels and history that doesn't lead me necessarily to just explore other more difficult subjects, for example. I don't really have examples, but it's like I'm not the one to there's so many filmmakers have a voice, and right now there's stuff I want to say that I didn't want to talk about 2 years ago. Let's just say that.
And something I've always wanted to know is how long has cabaret been around here in Melbourne? Because I've been coming for the last 3 years, but and also how has it evolved over time, like more so in the last 2 or so years?
So in Melbourne, to my knowledge, Sophia started it, and I don't think they did any before Sophia.
No.
So Sophia was in 2014.
November 2014 in Northcote.
Yeah.
At Uni's Kitchen.
Yeah, so we gathered at a restaurant, and they also had the church in the back. So it was very different, and working in a cafe kind of thing, but it still worked. We still managed to make a few films. That's how it started here in Melbourne. And Sophia really liked the idea of the non-competitive way of doing films. And also that's a trait of Filmonik and kinos around the world, is that we try very hard not to be competitive, and that makes us different from others. And so then people, I guess, will be more inclined to come and test their films, and because we're not there to judge. We're there for filmmakers and for everybody in the industry, not just for the filmmakers themselves, but for the DOPs, for the sound tech, for the actors, everybody in the industry. And but yeah, the cabaret, that's how it started with Sophia. And because I came from Montreal, I saw how the cabarets were there, and I've been through a few cabarets. And what's really fun about them is that everybody run them differently. So it is always very refreshing. And I like the way Sophia did it. It was simple, but it worked really well. And then I think, did we do another one? We did a small one with...
that was Bloomsday. James Joyce.
Yes, that's how Bernard.
That's how I got into it.
Yeah.
Want to tell us about it?
Well, that's a great story. I was taking still photographs for a theatrical company who write a play every year based on the novel of James Joyce, the Ulysses. And they wrote a play about James Joyce and Charlie Chaplin meeting in Paris because Charlie wanted to film Ulysses, which is almost physically impossible to do. And they said to me, wouldn't it be cool if we could get some films made for the 16th of June, which is when they have this play. And I'd had Filmonik bookmarked in my browser for a couple of years, and I thought, wow, I wonder if those people would like to do this. And we went along and really not knowing what to expect. And the theory was, hey guys, if we tear a couple of pages out of Ulysses and hand it to you, will you make a film? And little do we know, that's precisely what they would love to do. And so I think 2 days over in June 2015, 15, I was, all these guys turned up, and 8 films came out of it from memory, and we screened them all at the dinner that night, and then I went along to the monthly screenings, and I've never stopped, and I don't think I can stop it now. And I had never really made films, but that coincided with the same year that somebody helped me make a video of a fashion festival for old people, and it's just gone on from there.
And I remember when you would come and see me and say, Ify, I have short stories, but they're not short films. And I said, but they can be short films. And you said, no, it's not possible. And I'm like, come along to the cabaret and we'll try it out.
Yeah, and I was amazed because I'm a short story writer and a novel writer, and I think the first 3 cabarets I went in, I made a film on every single one based on a short story, and they just happened. It was a case of just standing up and saying, hey guys, I've got this short story, anybody interested in turning it into a film? And then somebody came up and grabbed it, and a day later they came back with a script, and then all of a sudden I'm making a film, and 3 consecutive cabarets, 3 films came out of it. But unlike Ollie, I can't write comedy to save myself, to be honest. So all my stuff's kind of serious and a bit dark, and but I just can't see how I would make comedy. So and to be able to turn some of these little short stories into films on the spot just astounded me. I still can't believe some of the things that we did, but I just observed this unbelievable energy to overcome problems in the shortest possible time. And it's like an energy that it's got momentum that can't be stopped. And they just come up against a stumbling block and overcome it and keep going. And in 2 days, you've turned a story into a film. So impressive.
And I find it relates to in real life also in the industry. Like, I'm losing my voice. Sorry. But it's because in real life we meant to prepare as much as we can, and it is something we always do, but there will always be surprises. So I find going into these cabaret sessions, it's a practice to get over these surprises as quickly as we can. And
it applies 100% to commercial work, because it's crazy the stuff that you have to do, and sometimes the budgets are not there. Sometimes the talent shows 1 hour and a half late. All the struggles of cabaret are there in the commercial work. And sometimes when I hear about someone fresh out of school, or someone who, there's a lot of people who idealize the filmmaking process, but I find it to be messy. From amateurs to Hollywood productions. And if you look at the history of even the Star Wars that's going to be released at the end of this month, this stuff is just mayhem, and they don't know how it's like. Yeah, you can have 300 million and it still can be complete mess, like a cabaret. And knowing how to react is a truly great quality of anyone on set, and react to, like, just improvise, just be creative and manage your stress levels, because I'm personally, like, I had one massive cabaret film in Montreal in 2010. Just a big team, army trucks, fake guns, pyrotechnician, all of that failed on set. Like, all my team.
He didn't have the actor that he wanted. Actually, none of the actors.
Let's not go into the details of it, but it's truly like, when you go through that once or twice or 3 times, hopefully you don't go through that more than 5 times. Like, if you fail all the time in your shoots, then maybe you should be in post-production or something. But But yeah, this stuff is just the same from cabaret to commercial work. You want to plan, but stuff happens.
Yeah, yeah.
To go back to the numbers of cabaret, there was the first one with Sophia. So it's Sophia Davidson Gluyas. She's a Sydney-sider, and she was in Melbourne for 3 years. And Sam Hilton, the organizer at Kino Sydney back then, she was kind of bored in Melbourne, and he just said to her, just start a kino. Start a kino in Melbourne. Just have a few friends, make short films and screen them. Find a venue. And she was like, yeah, I'll do that. Quickly, she saw that the Kino cinemas, they exist already. So they found another alternative name, which is Filmonik, Film and Kino inverted. There's only one other Kino group, and it was in Manchester in the UK, so they were called Filmonik. But yeah, that first cabaret, we had 12 participants. We made 7 films. So really intimate. We just sat around a table, and Sophia never attended a cabaret, and she was the organizer. So she turned to us, me and Ify, and she was like, you know how this should work? Like, just do your thing. And we were all sitting around that long table, and I said, I was on the tram, and I pictured, I don't even remember, but I just threw ideas around, and people started sharing immediately what the hell they wanted to talk about in that moment. And it's like, I've got an uncle who's doing this and that, and it's like, and yeah. Second one with James Joyce was a challenge, was crazy, because it's there was no other cabaret that was being organized in terms of like organization at Filmonik. We were just kind of on cruise control, but barely. Like the monthly screenings were going great, but there was no trace of any cabaret in the future. So when Bernard,
Leanne. It was Leanne, Bernard.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Bernard came.
when Bernard approached us and approached Leanne actually, and she was the co-organizer with Sophia back then. And she asked the group, she was like, how do you feel about us making films with James Joyce as a theme? And half of us were like, we don't even know what Ulysses is. And we looked at the Wikipedia entries, and we were like, it's one of the hardest English literature piece ever. So we're going to have fun. We have to make films about a subject that we don't even know about. No one's gonna read it, because we had also like 2 weeks just in advance to prepare. So
it was good to have these guys, because the book is 1,000 pages. It's a Bible.
yeah,
And when they handed me the book, they're like, this is what you're gonna have to make it on. I was like, I can't read this, guys. No. And
a lot of people can't.
I turned to them, and they're so passionate, like the Filmonik people are too. And they knew all the book by heart, and they knew exactly all the little metaphor, and they explained the book to us in a way that really made us want to make short films with them.
And the interesting thing was the general literary organisation considers this to be high literature art, this book, but in actual fact, to quote a friend of mine who's Irish, it is actually the greatest piss take of all time, and it's like it's got a joke on everybody. And the thing that the organisers really liked was that the Filmonik people picked funny stuff to pull out of it. And some of it, there was one film I distinctly remember was the only thing they could think of doing was to use a thumping great big copy of James Joyce to beat somebody up with. That was the nature of the film. Yeah. And seriously, the committee of the James Joyce loved it. They thought it was so funny, just because someone was actually letting the reading public know this is not a serious book. It's actually a lot of fun. And they actually got it right, and that's why we loved it so much.
And then after the third cabaret we did was in the book No, in the film event thing. Then we went back in April after. When
I'm
you
not
did,
sure about this one, but
when you did the little characters.
but that wasn't really.
It wasn't a really cabaret, but it was teamwork.
Yeah.
We had to make short films. It was our mandate to make short films during that little conference.
We were at a movie market and
Yeah.
we made short films as we were taking care of the table. So it's kind of not really an open. I mean, we had good chats with people who showed up to the table, but at that moment we were like, okay, we should start thinking bigger and making a cabaret. Because the thing is, it's like if you have a cabaret that is big enough, and big enough can be immensely scalable. But as soon as you have a good location and you know that enough actors, enough crew are going to show up, then the international community responds to that. And then suddenly it can become an international cabaret because there's a lot of people. It's easier for the Europeans to do that, but there's the whole filmmaking aspect and the collaboration, but the international collaboration is the cherry on top. It's showing up to a city you don't know, you don't have any friends, and then suddenly you're starting to make films. And this is the ultimate magic of improvised filmmaking, non-competitive. So that was our goal.
And learning about the culture also.
Yeah.
Working with different culture, so you know that they work differently. So you have to learn to work with them, but then you get new tools also.
The cinematic language differs from Aussies to Canadians to Europeans. I mean, Europeans, it's like, it's obviously it's French and Polish and everyone. But starting from 2017, we had the first international, the one that we could label international because there was enough infrastructure to host, to receive people. And I do remember you Tim, you had the chance, or maybe not the chance, but I mean, you were the DOP on the two filmmakers from Canada, if I remember well. So
That's right.
Did you enjoy? Oh, well, I shouldn't ask you the question. You're the podcaster.
It was a great experience for sure, absolutely. And that sort of makes me think of the next question, which is you guys must have seen so many short films by now after all these years. And so what I wonder is what's a great short film to you? What makes up something that you see and you think, damn, that was fantastic?
I love being surprised. But with time and with experience, I would say that every little thing is different. There's the script. So sometimes it's the story that will impress me. Sometimes the camera work. Sometimes it's like the actors with the directors. So you are surprised by the story, but you also see the little details. So over time, watching so many short stories, I did work my eye. How do you say it? Like I got practice to recognize a few things that I didn't know before, but I love being surprised. When I get surprised, for me, it's
it's
coup de cœur.
Yeah.
I love the particular thing about it that really gets me going is because you've got no time. You've got 2 days to do this. And sometimes, even with my short stories, they're short stories, so they're written in the third person probably. There's no script, there's no dialogue. What I love to see is all of a sudden the team just comes together. And I love relying on the actors to come up with their own lines. It's fascinating to watch. They read the story, they get the story, they start talking amongst themselves. And I remember in Sydney, I was setting a camera up and we had no dialogue. And the 2 actors had a copy of the short story in front of them, just reading it. And then I could hear them talking and saying, well, I'll say this. And then the other actor say, no, that's naff. I don't like that. No, I can't answer that. Or what would you say then? And then the whole time I'm setting up the camera for them to walk on to the set, and they're working out the dialogue. They walked on and they did it one take. Well, I said, "You're joking." Well, I don't need to do this again. It's perfect. And that's what I love, when the actors bring their stuff to it and you don't over-direct them. And they love it. You know, they love working up the character, and it all has to be done in no time at all. You know, they don't even have a script on the Friday night. They work that out on Saturday.
It depends on the actor also.
Yeah, you've got to be good actors.
Sorry.
And some of them are scarily good. They just switch on, and it's just phenomenal to see. They realise your idea, your script.
Can you see that when you're watching someone else's film?
Yeah, I think so. Well, but if you've written the story yourself, you really see it. And I do remember having this wonderful conversation with an actress in Sydney. We were sitting opposite each other and reading the story, and I read it out loud, and then she started changing it, and she said, "What about if we do that and do this, do that?" And I'm going, because I sort of had the creative capital there in front of me, I was able to say, "Yeah, it's getting better all the time," and what came out of it was just sweet as anything, and I was so impressed with that.
And I enjoy watching short films, and I like feature films also, and I never get bored because, and this is something we tend to stop ourselves from doing, is that we often think the subject has already been worked on. But there's always a way of talking about it, and it's how you bring it that will make the short story. So that's why I like watching how that person brought it to life and how they brought us to think what they're thinking. So, and that's why I always enjoy short films. I never think, "Oh, I already seen this before," because they're all different.
Yeah, if you remove a lot of the natural cynicism in short film watching, what you're left with is more of the sense of discovery still, because there's so many cliches that sometimes are just naturally in short films, or any film, to be honest, and you're like, yeah, if you start the film and you're jaded and cynical, then you're not in for a good time.
That's right.
How about you, Ollie? Is there any, over time, the short films, do you still enjoy watching them?
The weird part with me, and it's not weird, but I can't watch films online. And this is probably the main reason why I'm so much into short film events and nights in Melbourne. Like, and I really crave the short film nights. I just want to, because when I'm with an audience and we're having a few drinks and it's just laid back, and I love the short films. My attention span is immense, but if I'm home in front of my computer, I can't get around and watching short films. But I did when I was a judge for the Melbourne International Documentary Film Festival. I had a good playlist to get through, and I made the best setup to be fully there when I saw the films. But otherwise, when someone sends me his film online, it takes me way more time to look at it, and I just want to enjoy it in a venue.
Audience.
I think there's something about watching it with the people you know make films as well, and that's what happens on their monthly screenings. Maybe 50% of the audience, we know them, or they've been in cabarets or something like that, so you know they're all film aficionados and they're looking, and it's like going out. Like I don't like watching television anymore. When I look at a film, I go to a cinema every time, and it's like you're going out with your mates to watch a film on a big screen, and that creates the excitement. Our monthly screenings are really cool. I mean, it's just the best fun.
I want to talk about what does it take for a filmmaker to push their ideas further. Like we've mentioned, there's a lot of tropes and things like that we see in short films. But, you know, for someone that's made a few films and they're trying to get themselves to think outside of the box, you know, one way is maybe they travel out into the world and meet different people, and or for instance, perhaps they go out there and meet new people, or they try something like meditation or something like that. But what does it take to get out of your own head and to stop producing the same kind of ideas over and over again? How do you be original?
Well, to continue a film or your idea, I find perseverance is definitely a must. You have to love your ideas. Go for it. Don't give up. That's what I would say is you have to follow your heart and never give up when you do films. So I always said if I ever do a feature film, I really have to love it because it's years of production. I don't want to give up in the middle. Yeah. If not, it's the resources. You need to have, like Filmonik is, I find is good for that, is you'll meet a lot of people in the industry. So then you have resources in that sense. If you have any production questions, you might have that person in mind that will be able to help you. Or camera questions, you have the other person to help you. So it's a community that will be there to answer any questions, I find. And in the industry, we need that. We need help to learn and to persevere and to encourage ourselves.
That's one of the reasons that cabaret works so well. Is if somebody has never been in film before, they think, oh, how could I ever make a film? I mean, I need a cameraman, I need a sound person, I need an editor. All the different disciplines that you have to have a film at the end, and you're just one person wanting to be in the film industry. How do you do that? Well, the cabaret is how you do it. You suddenly turn up with just an idea and the room's full of every one of those disciplines, and they're all turned around and go, greetings, we're here to help you make your film. And that's unbelievable resource.
And it's not just our cabarets too, sorry, I touched the mic. It's not just our cabarets too, but let's say if they don't know about the cabaret, there's a lot of groups out there that are there to do readings of scripts. Those can help because you do want to test your script before you go into production. And then there's also all kind of other groups, filmmaking groups out there that are very similar to us, and it's good to go out there and try to grab them that way. I find it's kind of the only way that I met people in the industry. That's what I think.
Yeah, on a longer scale, when it comes to like finding your own voice, that's something that can become worrying at first, especially if someone tells you like, oh, you need your voice to pierce through all the noise and all the short films, even though piercing through is not necessarily the objective. I mean, if you want attention, if you want to make your best film until the next one, always, because you're never as good as the one you just made. But I think longer term, it's really, if you make a lot of short films, then I think it worked for myself. So I don't know about the others, but I was doing a lot of stuff. And I even had another filmmaker that was older than me and maybe a bit more experienced, or at least she was in activism. She was precise. She had like her points of interest and agenda maybe, but whatever. She was like, what's your point with your short films? And she was very confronting, but I knew in my mind, why I was there. I couldn't really explain it, but I was like, I'm doing this. I'm not sure exactly what's my voice right now, but I'll figure this one out. And then 4 or 5 films, and then with conversations with people like, they see the thread. They see what you're about, and they see naturally what you're going into, and then when you're able to exploit that thread, then you become good with yourself. You have a voice, and then after the next step is destroying all of that and going places, going beyond what your zone of comfort zone is. So yeah, from filmmaker to filmmaker, it's vastly different. But when you were asking about like how to challenge yourself, I do find it fun to stay in your comfort zone because it's so hard finding your own voice. It's easy to stay in it because when you're actually like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to talk about. I know if you're just about absurd comedies, then be it. But you have to get out of it at some point, or I don't know.
And then it's also fun to work in teams, brainstorming. It's a way of getting out of your comfort zone because the other people might challenge you.
Oh yeah, letting go. Just like you just let go. Stop trying to control everything, and then you just get down that river of filmmaking pain.
Yeah, it was a beautiful example at the last cabaret. I realised I wasn't going to be able to make a film. My idea was too big. And so I was getting pretty depressed. And then on the Sunday morning, Lawrence, who's on our committee, just came up to me in the lab and said, "I've got an idea, and you're going to act it." And I thought, "Oh no, not me." And we then sat down, three of us, Alexandra as well, and we just wrote a script. And it was just from a pure idea he had, and we actually started filming on the Sunday morning, and it just exploded. And we almost didn't have hardly any more than a couple of takes because we got on a roll and we were feeding off each other and coming up with lines all the time. And then we just went outside and we filmed it and we edited it, and there it was. And I just didn't think I was going to have a film at all. I was a bit depressed, to be honest.
And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. But looking back at that experience, I remember watching you. I remember when Lawrence came and was like, "Are you busy?" You said, "No, I'm not doing anything," surprisingly. And then Alex also sat down. And the whole process is that they all brought in, you were all three with your laptop starting to write. And you all had new processes of writing.
Oh, yeah.
But you started sharing.
I was writing on paper, Alex was typing, Lawrence was doing
the way
something else.
you would feed yourself with the ideas, you created this short film. For me, from an outsider, when I was looking at this, that was beautiful.
It really was. It was it was the essence of it in the shortest possible time. It was terrific to be part of it.
It was a good writing workshop.
And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the three of us. Probably if there's two of us, it wouldn't have worked. It was just we had the right people.
Wouldn't have been the same.
And it was serendipity because Alex was standing up there just looking at it, Lawrence and me talking, and I think I said, "Can you help with the script?" And she just nodded and sat down and we're away. Off it went. So you've got to be open, absolutely open for anything that comes up, and just allow it to happen. And really good stuff happened that weekend. How many films do we make? 24 films?
Yeah.
24 films in 2 days?
Yeah, but more were shot and not screened. So I even forgot I had to edit a film for someone, and it came out like just 2 days ago. I was like, oh, I had this film to do. Oh my god! But the two actors, they were fine. They were like, they've kind of vaguely forgot about it too, because they knew it's gonna be at the monthly screening anyway. So at least the film was shot. So
the material
if it's
is
in the
there.
can.
Yep.
It can be released anytime. So.
Do you think we answered the questions for the filmmakers out there? It's hard to give tools, I find, because we learn about them as we go. Definitely for me, resources. My friends, my environment. Yeah.
It is a difficult concept to get across to people who have never done it, just exactly how it works. It seems to be chaos. But out of the chaos comes order in some shape or form, and everyone I've been in, it's come out the other end. You're halfway through, you think, what's going on? I can't understand. We're not going to have any films. And then there's 20 films at the other end. You go, what?
And for my ideas, it's going to sound weird, but I feed myself from the others. So by watching the others, it gives me creativity. And it's a weird way of... I sound like I'm a succubus.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's important to me is when you conceive of a project, you have to realise that these people are giving a lot of their time to your project. So you've got to be aware that you need to give something back. And that means you really do have to make sure or do your very best to screen something, because all these people have worked for you. And if they've got nothing to see on the Sunday night, that's a bit disappointing for them. And that focuses everybody's attention to keep the scope the right size and get it done. Some fall over, as they will, because the process is really imperfect. But everybody's trying their level best to get that film up. And the joy in the audience on the Sunday night is something to see.
Yes, I've noticed. I agree. I think it's a really interesting point you've made about letting go, because there's times when you're out there making a film and, you know, sometimes you have a really specific vision of how you want the end result to look when it finally gets to the screening. But then there's kind of this turbulence involved where, you know, it's like, I didn't get the shot I wanted and now we're running out of time and I'm going to have to change this. And there's like this resistance that comes up in filmmakers. And then you have to kind of teach yourself to just like, just let that go, you know. But is there any kind of trick to the technique, or is it just kind of a matter of letting go of that perfectionism and kind of being able to go with the flow, not just, you know, in a 48 or 72 hour filmmaking environment, but also on a big project like a feature film, something that you've put a lot of time and money into?
So short film is definitely a good practice way to go towards a feature film. It's good to always have that aim for perfection. We should always aim for it. But it is an art to let go. If I do live also in my real life, I don't work in filmmaking, but I have to apply it also at work because I'm a control freak. And everybody around me knows. And they're like, Iffy, you have to delegate. I'm like, okay. But as soon as you delegate, the other person doesn't do it exactly like you do. So I have to let go. And that's okay. It's a learning curve. And so always aim for perfection is fine. Letting go is really good also because you should never let go and end it there. Let go, but still finish the project, because it is a good practice for future projects. And if it happens on a feature film, it happened to renowned filmmakers, you have to push through. You have to go, well, that didn't go well. Please don't talk about this. And continue.
Yeah.
Rarely does.
Yeah.
It never does, actually.
I was the same. I was a consulting engineer. So when I came to do this, I really had to let go. And then I suddenly realised how cool it was to let go.
Oh, yeah.
Because somebody else steps into it and solves a problem, and they just buoy you up, and then you go, no, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. No way am I giving up. And you find another way. And the best example of that was in Sydney. I foolishly shot the middle of my film first, believing I could go to Coachworks in Sydney to do the start and the finish. And we waited till the next day to film that, and we weren't allowed to film. And we all piled back in the car and drove back and thought, we have a middle and no start and no end. And it was just a black pall over the car as we were driving back, because we knew we had a really good middle bit. And then we were just walking towards the lab, and I said, we can't let go of this. We just can't let go of this. we're going to shoot it on the entrance to the lab, make it look like a gallery entrance, and we're going to shoot it. And we shot it, and it ended up a film. And
Right.
it would have been a catastrophe had we just dumped it and gone, no, I want Coachworks, it's perfect. If I did that, we wouldn't have had a film. And so glad we just pushed through and used the first entrance we walked into.
For anyone who looks at the making of on the Blu-ray on DVDs, like if you look at any that are great and go in depth, there's always like, oh, we lost our location 2 weeks in advance, and then suddenly something else emerged. Result is arguably better for it, but these examples are always they're in the fabric of the filmmaking. When it comes to letting go, for me, it starts with the creative process. Instead of thinking that the ideas and the short films or the feature films or the entire script is taken from your brain and it's like a limited bag full of stuff that you pick, and then it's like, oh, if I burn that idea, it's never gonna pop again, or something like that. It's more like, yeah, you open the faucet of creativity and it's just a constant stream of water, and you just pick water, and the lake is never empty. So when you're not afraid of not having more ideas after that, it's easier to just kind of finding a compromise on the project you're working on at the moment, because you not only that project is gonna be fine, but then the next one you're gonna be stepping up anyway, because you're not gonna, hopefully, that's very idealistic of me of thinking that the creative ideas never run out, but to some extent it's when you're in that mindset and you think, I'm never gonna it's never gonna go dry.
It's
It
like
can
that
go
blank.
dry, but
It's a writer's blank page. It's
oh
that
my
there's
God,
that
yeah,
fear,
that's-
but then you try to always do something to recreate it. A lot of people go traveling, they go writing somewhere else, they go within groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is hard when you are stuck. You're stuck. Yeah.
And a lot of life experience gives you, grist for the mill, and the more things you've done in your life, you have things to draw on all the time. And a lot of my short stories come from things that have actually happened and then modified. A lot of stories, I rewrite the ending, like real life didn't happen the way I wanted to, so I rewrote it so it comes out much better. And that's a really great way of going, now I'm right, But just feed off what happens to yourself.
And I love people's stories. For my part, I that's what I enjoy the most, and I remember people's story for that reason. Because I know it will be a story for me to tell, but not naming the person, but we can always twist it a bit.
Yeah, comedians, filmmakers, it's all the same. You hear stuff, you're like, oh, this inspires me, or this makes me laugh so much. It brings you other places.
Yeah.
I have a more of a practical question for the next one. So, one of the things that comes up when filmmakers, or I suppose newcomers, have is, how much does equipment matter when it gets into making short films? Like, I don't have a good camera, I don't have lights, I don't have sound equipment. But how do you feel about just using what you have as opposed to running out there and buying a whole lot of fancy stuff?
Well, I honestly do think the story is everything, and the gear doesn't matter.
And you can use the gear that you have in certain ways that, like, not the conventional ways. There's always things that you can do around it. For example, like filming from a box, let's say, so that's where you don't see equipment as equipment, see them as like fun tools.
For me, the skills are extremely important. So, like, learning learning to be autonomous is the biggest quality that I see in a filmmaker. So if you want to write, then and you're always stopped by thinking that you need the best gear, then you're not gonna do your stuff. But also when it comes to editing, that's a bit of the harsh one, because you kind of have to learn it, and the learning curve is harder than the learning curve is stronger than taking a camera and shooting everything on automatic. But if you have a poor if you have an older camera and you still manage to edit the story and it holds itself and the pacing is good, then that's worth everything, because storytelling.
Is there places out there that have editing program, like not program, but editing software, but for cheaper for people?
Yeah, Resolve, DaVinci Resolve at the moment is free. You get some of the advanced features are locked behind fixed price of like 400, but regular people don't need that. It's like extremely advanced tools that are not available. Otherwise, it's free. There's plenty of stuff out there.
There's also, like, let's say you need a computer, then you go to Docklands Library usually.
Like my friend from Spain found that the full Adobe suite was on the Macintoshes at the Docklands Library, and she edited a whole documentary down there for nothing. And I went down there, and that's where I started to learn Premiere Pro. And I went down there week after week learning it, and then finally I decided I really did need it at home, and I subscribed, and now I've got it at home.
So then that's it. We started thinking, if we don't have a computer, what do we do? And then if I don't have the software, what do we do? So we should not get stuck thinking we don't have the tools, and just go around as much as we can with what we have.
There's festivals like SF3 in Sydney that celebrate the use of mobile phones for short filmmaking. So there's always niche. I mean, it's not even niche. It's mainstream. Everyone's got a phone. So when people say, "Oh, you can shoot on anything," we've heard that before, and it's true. So even when it sounds wrong, when people repeat it, "Oh, you can shoot anything on a phone now," and yeah, it's true. It's annoying to hear, but
I mean, sometimes you may want to do something which is beyond the phone, but really, to me, story is the most important thing, and you can seriously pretty much get it on a phone.
And any camera that gives you manual control, so it can be an old Canon 550D or anything. It will take anyone 2 years to just master that tool. So it can be an old tool, it can be an older camera. I shot some of my celebrated award-winning short films were shot on a Panasonic GX8, and that's kind of a toy. It's not made for filmmaking, but this is what I used. What I wanted was 4K, and I got that, and the rest was, the dynamic range was quite poor, so I had to learn how to grade in post-production. I learned how to go in the menus and reduce sharpness, find all these tricks to maximize the use of that specific camera. And that helped, because when I upgraded, I was like, oh my God, this is now the best, because the camera has all the advanced features that were not available before. But I learned how to get these, and even on a phone.
So you understood them better.
Yeah, you understand the how a sensor processes information. So learning with tools that aren't super good makes you just kind of, you find the tricks, you find the workarounds, and that brings you knowledge that someone just being fed with all the best tools and the money and all that, you're like, this is too easy. sometimes.
So don't stop yourself
Yeah.
with the tools.
And let's face it, if it wasn't for digital, all of this filmmaking would be almost impossible. If we still had to shoot on 35mm film,
We did it for 8
it
hours.
would be really hard to...
We did it for 8 hours with film.
Seriously?
Yeah, we
Oh,
did. So
wow.
no, that is
Wow.
not true what he just said.
But you couldn't screen on the Sunday night.
We did.
You developed the film and everything?
We did.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
35 mil with industry DOPs, sponsored by
It was,
Kodak.
it was in
developed
the
by Kodak.
basement, and it was hanging everywhere.
Oh
And
yeah,
when
but
we cut the film, it was like, let's pray it's the right cut. Because
Yeah,
we
the
didn't
kitchen
have
was
all the
used.
tools.
Yeah.
Because we did definitely not have the tools to see where we were cutting.
Well, there it is. Never say die. He could do that. He could do anything.
Yeah, the
That's good.
kitchen was used for the 8 mil black and white, and 16 mil. So it's just different years and different cabaret, but all these developing ourselves on film led to the ultimate, which was 35 mil.
But I
cinema.
remember this person didn't make what he or she wanted, and I remember they took the film and they just draw on it, and they were like, "Here we go, there's a film," and it was a bit like really absurd, but at the same time we're like, oh, well, we have a short film, pretty much.
Just drawing on the prints themselves and then
Yeah.
running the prints again at the right frame rate. So it was a cartoon. It was just
It worked.
yeah.
One of the interesting things, last weekend I shot a film and one of the crew members was in our cabaret the 2 weeks before, and I was quite surprised to see her there. And we got to talking while we were standing around freezing to death. And I said, "What are you interested in the filmmaking process?" And she says, "I don't know yet. I'm just going to try everything until I find the thing I like." And I thought, that's exactly what I'm doing. And it's taken maybe 3 or 4 years, but I now no longer hanker after being a cinematographer. I think that's not my bag. I can't do that really well. And I'm starting to concentrate back on my first love, which was sound and script writing. But I think I don't have the eye for the cinematography, and I've let that go. That's fine by me. And you can't be good at absolutely everything. And but it was an interesting, because she's just starting out, and she said, "Oh, I've got to try everything." And so
I think I sent her there.
yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I was like,
and she
I
was
know you're free. Do you want to try it out? And she said, yeah. And I knew that the person needed a runner and an assistant. And I said to the person, is it okay if the person who will send has no experience? And he said, that's fine with me. And that was just...
So we had sound workshop while we were sitting around waiting, and I was teaching her how to use the Zoom and stuff like that, and she was just attentive like you wouldn't believe. It was incredible to watch. She was just... And then she wanted to use the boom. Can I use the boom? And off she went.
Until you're in the frame, you want to use the boom.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But that kind of enthusiasm is fantastic, because you've suddenly got a learner, a vibrant learner on your hands, and there's nothing better.
That's great. I want to talk specifically about cabaret. As you guys have mentioned some of the stories that have come from your time, but what was one moment where you could just kind of bask in the difficulty or the absurdity of cabaret? Was it a time when you were trying to get something done and everything was just going haywire, or it was just some of the strange things you have to do to get a film done in such short time?
Oh, there's heaps of stories out
I
there.
think I slept under my laptop a couple of times at cabarets in Brussels and whatnot. It's just like editing. It's like, oh, I'm collapsing, and then sleep under the table, wake up 3 hours after, go back to editing, and people are like, did you move? And it's like, oh, no, I went to bed. Where? I was just under the table. I was there. You missed me. But
I remember one of yours. I have 2 stories. So Ollie once, so I couldn't help him on this short film at a cabaret, and I had to work But I was like, oh, he's going to be fine. But he came back and he said that was the worst and I'm not making any more short films in my life. And I was gutted. I was like, no, don't do that. Why? And he couldn't do it. He was in a ball. He was in the room, balled up. And he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's so horrible. It didn't go at all like he had planned in his short story. But he saved it. So he wasn't like, he was balled up for like hours. It was really hard to see. And yeah, it was really, really hard to see. But I don't know when he got up, but he decided, okay, I have footage, I can do something with this. And he turned it around and it became kind of like a parody. I definitely prefer
Parody trailer. It was.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the initial idea when you know what it is. But I'm happy that something came out of it. But it was definitely a hard time and a hard lesson. So I started directing films later. I've always been more of a producer. So my experiences are not around making the films. It's around helping the people. And I always remember, so this time I was helping Ollie also. And it was midnight and we had not shot anything. We didn't have the actress. And he came up to me, he's like, I chose her. And I was like, really? I was like, okay, let's do this. And I got to meet the person. At first I wasn't sure, but no, the person was perfect. But what really surprised me from that shoot is that, so this was back in Montreal, and it was in October, and his idea was out there. The actors had to go naked, and it was like getting really cold in October. It was getting towards like 5 degrees, and the actor had to get naked, and they did. And but then they were freezing, and all the muscles were bouncing around because like he was so cold, and then he got sick, and then we lost him as an actor, and the sacrifices that you have to do sometimes. And then I remember we were looking for the washing machine places, like a biology laundromat. Yeah. But all of them, they wanted money to rent the place. And then this guy came up and he's like, well, I have kind of a laundromat at the top of my apartment building. And we were like, sure. He's like, but it's not open. It opens at 5. It was like 2 a.m. So then he's like, well, you guys can sleep at my place. But then Ollie was allergic to cats, so he couldn't sleep at that place.
It was like a pet shop. Just
and
a park with cats and fur everywhere.
Yeah, and so the actress stayed with the guy, and I stayed in my car.
Yeah, we slept in the car
downstairs from that building when I live 15 minutes away by car. But I was like, we cannot miss this laundromat, so we will sleep in the car. So at 4 a.m. we woke up again, and we went back up and set up the laundromat, and we shot.
Never say
I
that.
find it ridiculous every time I think of this, that I slept 15 minutes away from my place in the car just for a short film.
Yeah. I think the one that I always remember is Cabaret 2 years ago. And I had a really simple 200-word short story, but we could not make it unless we found a male mannequin. And it was ridiculous. We thought of any number of things we could do, but seriously, it was not going to happen if we didn't find one. And then people in the cabaret started ringing friends and trying to find, has anyone got one of these things? And we were at Bakehouse Studios. And the further it went on, it looked like, no, this film's not going to be made because that's a prop we have to have. And they're not that common. There's a lot of female mannequins, but not many men. And then Iffy came up the stairs and said, I reckon there's one here somewhere.
Because I had remembered from the year before. I had seen one.
And then she disappeared again and got the manager, and the manager came up into the lab and pulled a curtain back, and there was a door. And he opened the door, and there was no lights inside. We were clambering around inside with mobile phones, lighting the place up. And there was a full-size mannequin not 10 metres away from where we wanted to film. We just pulled it out and made a film because... And it's ridiculous to think that such a rare prop was right there where we needed it all the time. And there was a picture of me, sort of my arm around the mannequin going, I don't believe this. I seriously do not believe this. And there were all sorts of things went wrong with that shoot. We were right on Hoddle Street on Saturday night, and there were motorcycles roaring up and down. There were police sirens, and we were trying to film a quiet scene. And in the end, I basically had to use the sound that was there. There was nothing we could do. But we got our film made, and that's the sort of thing. If you just don't give up, chances are.
Yeah, because you played around with the sound and it ended up much better.
Yeah, well, the classic thing was the very last, we were running out of time. We said, this has to be the last take because somebody else wants to use the room. They did, the dialogue changed every time because it was improvised dialogue. And the actress walked off the set. I was about to say cut, and this police siren just went whining all the way down. And everyone went, oh, as though ruined the shot again. And I thought, don't move. And we just stood there as the siren went off into the distance. And I thought, I'm going to use that. And I put it into the film. And really, I spent so much time on actually getting that final thing and enhancing the siren and all sorts of things. And it was a wonderful experience of making do with what happens. And
but that brings me to say, I always find one of the hardest, or like the jobs I'm always trying to understand is the person who has to look for location.
Yeah.
I find that really hard. How do you remember everywhere you've seen? Because I remember that mannequin.
Yep.
But why did I remember that? I don't know. But sometimes, like in films, you see the people that had to take care of location, and I find that fascinating. They'll remember those spots.
But then that's the joy of having so many people in the room, because the year before we wanted to film The Last of My Kind, and we needed a darkened tunnel, and we needed to shoot it at night, and people were just saying, somebody said, I think there's a tunnel under Royal Parade somewhere up near Parkville. Really? And sure enough, there was. And if that person wasn't there, we would never have found this really cool location. We just piled in cars and went there, and we walked down a slope, and all of a sudden there's this magnificent tunnel with graffiti all the way along it, and it could not have been better.
Yeah.
And because we had 30, 40 people in the room, and everyone went, I've heard, I remember somewhere. Now, if you had a little group of 5, you'd never have found it.
Sometimes it's just meant to be.
Yeah, I reckon.
And for those interested in getting involved in Filmonik and making their own stuff, what tips can you give to make the short film experience easier in the production process specifically, but it also could be in writing and also in post-production?
Do it with what you have. Don't be afraid. Go for it. And come and screen it. It is an open mic short film event. So you can come up to us, give us a USB stick, and we will play it. Yeah.
I think you have to put the deadline on yourself. It's just because otherwise it's too easy to be like, oh, I'll screen it in Feb, and then it's March, and then you're like, oh, April it's gonna be ready, and I think you're better if you have a higher turnover of. I mean, you don't have to do a short film each month, but to get the ball rolling, I think it's easier if you have something to screen first. Even actors can show a film they played in, or I don't know, if you're starting from zero, obviously there's nothing like just showing up and chatting, and that can be the hard barrier, because obviously if you show up at Filmonik and for any reason you don't feel like approaching people on a specific night, then that means you're gonna have to try the other month. But if people see your face 1 month, maybe you won't get the chats that you wanted on the first try, but second try it's like, oh, I saw you last month, and then stuff happens. So
And
it's
I
a
always
bit of
remember.
patience and motivation. Yeah,
I always remember like a few people would come, and they would start chatting, and then they would say, "Do you think I can do this for next month?" And I said, "Yeah, you should." And for example, one person was like, "But it's just a cooking show," and I'm like, "That's fine. That's perfect. You can do anything with a cooking show. You can bring it to wherever you want it to go," and they did, and that's how they started being involved with Filmonik. So you can bring a big film, you can bring a smaller film, you can contact us before, you can submit even the film beforehand now. If they are longer than 5 minutes, you can write to us. If we can play it, we will. If the night is not too full of short films. But yeah.
Every single screening, there's 1 or 2 films that are solo films. A film that is just someone who shot himself, and then some, like most of the time it's super creative, it's super insane. Not necessarily camera movements, but
The idea has a story.
yeah. One filmmaker, Phil, made like 3 films in a row. He was alone, and one of his films had robots.
I loved it.
He was acting in it. He was moving the robots as he was acting, as the camera was filming. Like, it's just insane, and this is so good to... I mean, obviously, his example is a bit over the top because the film was amazing at the same time, but there's just a cooking show. The cooking show was from Ronan, and he turns out he's an amazing DOP. He's extremely motivated in being in a lot of films. So yeah, films made alone are not only funny, but they're celebrated in a different way. You can have a giant team and your film is so-so, but you can be alone and making something weird and quirky, and it's gonna get celebrated. And then people know you after, obviously. It's like, oh, you're the guy who, or the girl, or, yeah.
But I'd say if you didn't have any idea at all, just come along to a monthly screening and just talk to people. The writers are the worst ones because they always think their stuff's rubbish. But you could release that person if you just engage in conversation and they say they're a writer but their stuff's crap, because they always say that. You say, well, send us a copy. And then you might think, I think I could see a way that could be filmed. Now, if you can help them make their first film, they're away from that.
Yeah,
they will be launched from that time on.
Yeah, Filmonik is very much for everybody. It's not just for directors, because it is a place for actors to come and get a role. It is a place for the writers to have the rest of the team. It is a place for the DOPs, all the gaffers, the light technicians. Everybody has a place. Because making a film, you can do it yourself, but it's really fun to make it in a team.
Yeah.
And also, as with experience, I would definitely want a team. Especially today, I'm very tired. I don't want to make a film alone.
Your excuse.
And that's it. In a team, it is just a ball of fun, a seriously ball of fun, and that's what I love about it. And it's because it's what's the term Ollie uses, particularly cabarets? It's spontaneous, collaborative filmmaking. It's literally an explosion of creativity because everyone's got the same motivation at the same time. And
it's a great gathering. Filmonik is a great gathering. So come along, come with a film or just to chat, and we will be there to embrace you guys.
Fantastic. And before we wrap up, I have to ask, how does going on the filmmaking journey change you as a person from when you first start and you haven't actually worked on a short film before, but then you get to the point where you've done a few things and you've dealt with some of the stress, some of the frustration, and you've taught yourself to let go. And you've also tried to learn how to collaborate with other people that don't think like you. How do you think you guys have changed?
It definitely opened my mind, and I love working on different productions. I've learned a lot with Ollie, but I learned a lot also with the other people I work with. And sometimes I would come back to Ollie and be like, oh, why are you not doing that? It's just not him. But I would take it on board because it's something I find it was something I could work with. So working with everybody and working with the people I got to meet within Kino and Filmonik improved me as a person, and I had more tools also. And in life, it definitely opened my mind to the point where I think a lot of people might think I'm crazy because now everything is creative. And I work in the science world, and I think I'm a bit too quirky for them. But it's my signature, and I embrace it. And I think they love it a bit. They love it from like that. For me is the craziness sometimes. Yeah. So I got a bit more crazy by being in filmmaking.
Right.
Yeah.
It unleashed itself.
Yeah, it's Melbourne. If you're not making films, then you need to be a painter on the side, or you need to be a musician, you need to be in a band. There's an infinite amount of outlets, and filmmaking is one. It can be a hobby, it can be a professional thing, but it's good to find balance in these things.
It's totally changed my life, I can tell you. I mean, it's taken off in a completely new direction. I mean, I'm retired, and I now work full-time at making films, photography, documentaries, and all sorts of things. And but the process of working with the Filmonik crew has completely changed the way I look at myself. I would never, in any shape or form, thought I could act in a film. And now I've done about 5, and I'm actually really kind of enjoying it. And up until only about a month ago, I just volunteered my time, but I've actually had 2 gigs where I'm going to be paid for the skills I've learned, which is amazing. It's seriously amazing. It's a crappy hourly rate, but that doesn't matter. People actually rang me up and said, would you do it? I can pay you $100. And I went, oh, okay. So I have a new career that's come out of this.
Yeah. No, it definitely completes my life. Without filmmaking, I would not be this happy. I am tired, but I am happy.
It's usually how you feel after a day on set anyway, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Ollie?
Change as a person. I'm not exactly sure. It would be, for me, dealing with people was a thing because I was too much into. I was always creative. When I was young, I was drawing all the time. I was doing RPGs. I was writing, making stories. So that was never a thing. I always had to find an outlet. If it was not one thing, it was another thing. So, but I was always in my own stuff, in my own mind. So being on a set as a filmmaker, I had to learn how to manage people, manage expectations. And when I say manage people, it's not as a boss. It's really as treating people right in the sense that if I'm only creative in my mind, and I've got just a bunch of people around me who are extremely confused, don't know what I'm thinking about, I need to explain, I need to develop, I need to share that experience. So sharing that experience, this is probably what changed me most and in the filmmaking process. It's learning not to be alone in it, in my mind, and being able to explore with other people, tell them what the script is, tell them, just have a chat about stuff instead of just being in a closed.
So it improved your communication,
Yeah,
you would say.
yeah, and people could argue right now I'm not very good at communicating, but no, it's better. It's better.
I think you're
No.
doing great.
Yeah, I think
the what happens also is right now I resource management is important. So when people show up, especially when you don't pay, which most of our short films at the moment, they're not commercial, they're not. It's nearly taboo to talk about money. We try not to talk about money, but everything has a cost. Obviously, we're renting spaces and equipment cost a lot and all of that. But still, in the creative process, we tend these days not to talk about money. But when you're not talking about money, then people need to. It's like, oh, yeah, how many hours can you give me? And it's like if someone says I've got 4 hours for you, let's make this film, then yeah, 100% have to respect these boundaries and not waste people time. If you make a project, you have to finish it. All these rules, it comes always to managing not and expectations and just be good.
Yeah. And as a team, we have to manage the whole room in a lot of ways and see that someone's not being left out, because some people are really forceful at getting what they want, other people stand back, and you've really got to keep an eye out for the ones that are standing back and see if you can drag them into it. And but it's taught me to let go heaps and accept help from others. Never was able to do that very well, but you won't get anywhere if you can't do that. So I'm enjoying letting go big time.
Me too. I really agree. All right. And how can those listening get in contact with you guys if they have questions about Filmonik filmmaking and they're looking to get involved?
I think the social media, the website is Facebook. The one that is most updated, that we post more and all the info is there. It's Filmonik Melbourne on Facebook. Otherwise, Meetup is big, but we're never as responsive, and Meetup is really to announce your meetups. It's not necessarily to have a chat around it. Instagram, we do post. I took a little selfie before we started this interview, so hopefully I'll post it on Instagram when we're done recording.
Sure.
And also the website.
Yeah, we do have filmonik.com.au. It's as up to date as a website can be, which means social media is updated.
Better.
Yeah, it's faster and it's more direct. But
And we have monthly screenings at the Loop project space.
Loop Bar,
Yeah. Loop Bar. We tend to do it at the end of the month on the Tuesday. Though the next one in December, we have moved it to the 18th of December. If you guys are interested.
That's
right.
It's a Wednesday. And
Christmas
at
screening.
7, it starts 6:37. So you guys can come for a chat. You'll see us running around trying to organize everything. I will try to have a chat with you.
Not to be confused with your short film Loop Bar, Iffy.
Yeah.
We've seen as well.
I like it. Oh, that was a
nice
funny
short
one.
film about someone stuck in a toilet and then looping back to the entrance of it. So
I really liked it. It was very cool.
I didn't think of the title until the last minute, and I was like, Loop Bar.
Yeah, your film is looping in the best, most terrifying way.
Yeah, so everybody's welcome.
And
All
Loop
right.
Bar is in Myers Place in the CBD, just off Burke Street, top end of Burke Street.
And Loop Bar's a great place too for meeting people in the multimedia field. They have a lot of activities there that is around multimedia. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably going to be our 5th year there. I mean, it's been our home for the longest time now. So yeah, Loop Bar.
All All right, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure having the three of you on the show today. You've all offered very different and unique perspectives, and I'm glad that we have Ollie as well, because I didn't know that he was coming in today, but I'm actually really grateful that we've heard some really interesting points from him that we wouldn't have otherwise had. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you
very
Tim.
much for having us on.
Thank you.
Yeah, the intruder. Hello.